18. We had, didn't we? We had a great day yesterday, a wonderful opening ceremony and a fantastic, healthy, productive set of panel discussions delving into ICT in the region, Jordan, and further afield as well. And guess what? We've got another, if you enjoyed yesterday, we have got another full day today of discussions jumping into digital tech and pretty much everything in between as well. So just a few things to get through before we kick off with our first panel discussion this morning. Remember our hashtag MENA-ICT18, MENA-ICT18. Guess what? It was on fire yesterday on around the region of Jordan, viral around Jordan and the region as well. We're going to do the same again. So things you hear, quotes, images, conversations that you have, things that you'd like to share out with partners and people that you think would be interested to hear what's happening over yesterday and today, please share that out as well. And remember, we are live streaming as well, so everything that happens on this stage doesn't just stay within these four walls, although this is not, they are not four walls, it is one wall, I believe. Anyway, so if you go onto the MENA ICT Forum Facebook page, there's a link there. Share that out with as many people as you can, and we can invite the world to see what's happening here today as well. One other thing to remember also, our coffee break will not be out here behind me downstairs. It will actually be in the startup exhibition area, so that give a chance to grab a coffee and to wander and have a look at some of the great 12 big ideas, the startups there. Again, they want conversations with you. It would be great if you could pop over, have a look, curious, and see exactly what they've got to offer as well. We also have the simultaneous translations also, so at any stage where we flip over, and we've done that quite a few times yesterday, I imagine we'll do the same again today, English or Arabic. We have the headsets which you can get just behind you at the top there. Right, let's kick off with our first discussion of the day, the first topic of the day. As you can see, it was up there. The topic is delegating to machines and keeping human focus on innovation. So machines, the role of machines, it's a topic that comes up across the world at tech events pretty much everywhere. We're going to jump into that topic and see really the real role of machines, and see also the role of humans in terms of innovation as well. The gentleman that is actually going to shape this panel discussion, please put your hands together for the manager of Crown Prince Foundation Fab Lab, Mr. Wael Masarwe.
Does this thing turn on? Is it on? Oh yeah. Good morning. It's very nice to be the first session in the morning. You know, only the people who are really enthusiastic and with lots of energy would come on a holiday. So nice to have you here. You know, it's very exciting to be discussing such a topic in such a day, in such a forum. The concept of automation, innovation, human beings, and how do you put those whole thing together. You know, I was mentioned as a manager of Fab Lab Foundation. Well, I am actually a consultant there, and actually I am a consultant at the Al Hussein Technical University. Why do I say this? Because although I am not an IT person, but I am in the, it seems in whatever you are, from wherever you are in the middle of this automation cycle. You know, this whole thing of automation is not new. I was, discussing with the esteemed group here that, the concept of automation has always been there. You know, when I was in college, I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm a manufacturing engineer, I've been in industry for many years. What's interesting is that automation has been there since the start of humanity, but in different forms. The one that I witnessed during my life is the one that where you start with hard automation, where you do it with gears and everything, and people think of factories and cars and what have you. And then sometime when this microprocessor became cheap enough, people started programming things. For us, when I was in college, that was a very exciting period. We started programming lines instead of machining a cam or machining a gear or what have you. With time, other concepts started coming out. People started talking about, automation of workflows, automation of processes, automation of this, automation of that. And then suddenly the concept of artificial intelligence started coming in. It was really interesting. I took a course in artificial intelligence in college in 1986. I was doing my master's in the States. Many of the concepts we were talking about were there. We were talking about them, but technology was not up to it. I was once invited to work on a project on an autonomous vehicle in 1987 in the States also. It was a Chrysler minivan with 4 Sun workstations in the car. It was really a big hassle to put the workstations in the car, So now we don't even talk about it. Artificial intelligence suddenly is becoming mainstream. Autonomous vehicles about to become mainstream. Automation is embedded in our life. We started looking at things in a now we started looking at the social aspects, technological aspects, business aspects, and all of this is creating actually lots of interesting dilemmas that we have to solve. And this will be the topic of our session today, We're very fortunate to have a very distinguished group of people on the panel with varying background. Actually, during our discussion and setting up for this session, we were kind of discussing how are we going to take the flow of this discussion so as to cover the aspect of innovation, automation, and how do you combine them together and create this continuum between the human and the machine so as to maximize the return. So we decided that we will talk concepts and we take examples and then we will close with social and many issues that actually impact the introduction of automation to our life. I am fortunate to have an interesting group of people over here from different backgrounds. Miss Samah, sorry, I have to take my paper. Miss Samah Al-Afif is actually a computer scientist, a senior data management associate with the UNHCR, with varying backgrounds in different aspects of automation, robotics, as she will talk to us about it, and also in data management. And actually what's more interesting is the implementation of many of these concepts into humanitarian aspects. So it's a very, very important concept. We have Mr. George Dimitriou, who is visiting us from Greece, has a master's in mathematics, computer science from Germany, and has a very wide experience in all over the world in many different areas related to implementation of computer science and projects, and will give us a very interesting aspect of the social and the technological aspect of automation. We have Mr. Muhannad Abedat from Oracle, again, a very well-versed human being in terms of implementations of workflows, in terms of business and government. And last but not least, Mr. Bobby Varansai, from CEO of Marzel Consulting, and he's coming to us from Malaysia. If you look at his CV, a very interesting CV, covered a wide aspect of interesting aspect in computer science and also all over the world. We're very fortunate to have you here, and we're looking forward to a very interesting session. We will start with Bobby. Bobby, you will actually give us an interesting idea about the overall view of concept of automation and how does it integrate into the world. You will show us a bit of a presentation, and we look forward to hearing from you. Please.
All right. Thank you. Very good morning. What I will do is spend a quick few minutes in setting the stage as it relates to the topic at hand, machine learning, machines, automation, innovation, and what's happening in the world And we'll talk on some of the impacts that have been pertinent. They have been pointed out during yesterday's discussion as well. Let me quickly jump into this and first talk to you about the evolution of technologies. I'm sure you're all aware, over the last broadly 250 odd years, we've had what's known as, in the economic cycles, called quantitative circles. It has always been innovation, there has always been transformation through introduction of technologies. While did mention about a whole lot of those robotic arms and other stuff that he had seen in the 80s. Those are all part of technological transformation. So what we are now is known as the sixth wave or Industry 4.0, whichever term you would like to choose. The difference, and the biggest difference between the first 5 cycles of transformation and the sixth, is the reduced dependence of human capital within the entire context of transformation. And I think that's what's causing a lot of concern around the world, including in Jordan. And it's also asking us to fundamentally rethink the way in which we manage enterprises, the way we manage societies, the way government manages a nation or a set of relationships around the world. Let's jump in quickly into the whole automation spectrum, right? You've heard about digital labor, you heard about talent crunch, you've heard all over, you keep speaking about the need for new skills. Yesterday we had some vociferous discussions around universities still teaching people the old way, right? Going back to the 70s, and our industries unable to employ people because their skills are necessary yet insufficient to the modern era of requirements by a company. What is this fundamental reason all about? That's the digital transformation is also influencing labor from basic automation all the way through to cognitive sciences. Now, it would be foolhardy for anyone who is in the transactional automation space to argue that they are actually using artificial intelligence. It is more marketing rhetoric than reality. I think so. My first recommendation would be is to make a substantial distinction between what is transactional automation and what is really cognitive sciences. Cognitive sciences has not really gotten off the labs yet outside of a DeepMind or a Google Brain. It is still in its infancy. The only cognitive technology that is worth any discussion that is today being utilized in the world is CRISPR. I'm sure you all heard about the gene editing technologies. That's the only AI-based solution that really works, and nothing else has really come out of labs. So let's get back to what it is today. It's basic automation, and basic automation is essentially transactional. So yes, there's no issue in terms of automation. We've had mechanization for 100 years. What is fundamentally different with today's automation is in the nature of its influence on enterprises. Earlier, a new technology, when it was introduced, it used to complement a human endeavor. So a certain repetitive task, when you introduced a machine into that process, whether it was a robot or a little bit of an automated lathe machine instead of an old machine, it complemented human behavior. The human's job got transformed, and he started doing slightly more intelligent things. What is happening in today's context is that the machines have come to a certain level of advancement that they believe, we have still not seen any proof in the pudding yet, that machines could completely replace humans. That is the fundamental challenge. However, in the context of transactional automation, today we are not automating roles, we are still automating tasks. So let me give you a fundamental example in the technology world for the IT service companies. In 2008, if you were to run a $100 million book to deliver IT services, software development, application maintenance, and support services, you would need, on an average, anywhere between 3,500 to 4,000 qualified individuals to deliver those services, given the level of and maturity of technologies then. Today, you can do that exact same $100 million worth of work with no more than 250 people. That is a fundamental challenge today we are facing. So let's look at the influence of labor in its context. The transformation of labor is moving across from discrete tasks to complete replacement. And you've all heard about chatbots. I'm sure you all keep dealing with chatbots in extremely discrete fashions and manners. But it has come to a point, and I would ask you to download an app called Replica, Replica with a K, which essentially replicates your entire behavior, and it's chatbots learning by individual interactions. So if you think of a call center environment or a help desk environment in the current context, a chatbot is essentially structured around a set of instructions at the back end. It only responds to that behavior as you ask the questions, and if you ask a a question out of context, it doesn't respond. But today's chatbots, and as we go into the future, you will start seeing that the chatbots are learning from individual behavior by interacting with multiple customers, and they're aggregating that learning. And I know Mohammed will talk to you a lot about machine learning, and that's where it comes to play. So this is the transformation of digital technologies that is influencing human capital. So let's not get too overboard in terms of job replacements, because there's a lot of rhetoric coming from all the large consulting firms that says that millions and millions of jobs will go away. Partly it's right, but there's a larger context and a more complex context. Let me set the stage with respect to what's happening with workforce itself. And I think this part of the world, the larger Arab world, does distinctly suffer. Approximately 100 million people in the age group of 18 to 25 are jobless, and approximately 500 million individuals in that same age group are not in employment, education, or training. And these are big economic issues for any country to manage. So I would like to think that when we talk to governments and we ask for specific policies pertinent to our industry, and we say, give me this tax holiday or give me this flexibility, we need to definitely appreciate the larger complex context within which a government operates, whether it is a Jordanian government or a UAE government or Singapore or Indonesia. The larger context is job creation. You and I are busy pursuing balance sheets, and we would like to get it smarter, more efficient, more highly effective, and if we can do it with less number of jobs, so be it, right? Because we are all capitalist in nature anyway. However, the larger context with governments is not necessarily capitalism. So we will have to marry the two, and that's where solutions need to come to play. So these are the realities with respect to labor. But in the context of organizations, the transformation is in digital transformation of the workforce itself. You understand the pyramid nature of corporations, right? At the top, you got the most intelligent, most senior, most experienced people. At the bottom, you got agents, right? It's a big triangle. And what is happening today with transactional automation is that the bottom is hollowing out. So that's the complaint we have, that when an individual, when he comes out of a college with a fancy course, fancy degree, he's just unemployable in your corporate context because he is used to an instruction-oriented way of life, whereas you're expecting the person to be fairly cognitive. So human capital transformation does not necessarily happen if organizational transformation doesn't happen. So when we talk in the larger context, and I will leave it for a bigger conversation during the panel itself, is what are we delegating to machines? What do we want to delegate to machines? We have been delegating to machines a lot of the transactional drudgery for a long time. The fundamental difference has been we moved that drudgery from the manufacturing space into the services space, which opens up a wider field of play, and it also opens up a substantial amount of disruption. That's a fundamental difference. So we are delegating simple transactions because we want to get it faster. For example, a bank wants to issue a loan in 2 minutes, right? The only way that is possible is to eliminate human interaction in that verification process from an application to a disbursal. That is possible if you set some parameters. That's where machine learning comes to play. And that's exactly what is happening today, because in a hyper-competitive world, technologies are enabling us to do the right things. Okay, so what are we innovating? Is that delegation innovation in the true sense of the term? And I think we're missing the point here. My personal view is that's not innovation. It is going to happen anyway. It is operational efficiency. From approving a loan in 3 days to approving a loan in 2 minutes is efficiency. We haven't fundamentally altered the process. We've just dumped it on and delegated to a faster technology. But what is innovation in the true sense of the term? And is it going to be driven by a fear of job losses, or is it going to be driven by a set of needs that we want to transform nation states, we want to transform lifestyles, we want to establish hyper-connectedness in a very connected world? I think that is a larger question I would like to touch upon as we go through the remainder of the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bobby. I think you have set a good background for a further discussion. In our timing for the session, we'll keep enough time for discussion with the audience. And actually, I think we will try to raise more questions than we will actually answer in this session. Yes, it's very important to answer many of these questions. Number one, which always been the fear of automation. Are we going to replace people? I mean, how are we going to replace people? What's going to happen with the people that will be actually pushed aside by automation? That's a dilemma that will always be there, and We will try to address this even during the remaining presentations and discussions, and also during the audience discussion. Ms. Samah, we would reading what you have done in the area of humanitarian work, and how you integrated automation, be it through processes or through even the use of robots to actually impact some of the lives positively. That, while we're talking about automation that would, while solving problems might create some other problems, it'd be interesting to see some actually very interesting and humanitarian applications, and this kind of puts people at ease. We're interested to hear what you have to say on this.
Thank you, Wael, for this introduction, and thank you all for attending this very early but interesting session. There is much to discuss, but I will not have the time to preview everything, so I would like to highlight a few key points. When talking about robotics and artificial intelligence, we are talking about a very fast revolution, and it's really going fast. For the future, which is a source of fear for a lot of us, I think it will come with a lot of opportunities and a lot of future jobs. I think these technologies, the artificial intelligence and robots, will upgrade the current existing jobs that we are performing now. It took a very long time to move from the manual cash working in the banks to the ATMs, but I think it will take a shorter time to move from the current banking practices to the smart banking or using robots to serve people and clients. For the current private sector, I think they are already progressing in the artificial intelligence. Yet for non-profit organizations, in light of the current situations, and we are surrounded by a crisis from every direction, and there is a lack of funds, a lack of resources, and also in light of the competition for the existing resources, we need to efficiently and effectively utilize these resources. So humanitarian organizations need to learn from the private sector. For the humanitarian organization, there are too many examples in using artificial intelligence and robotics for the humanitarian work. I will back first to the point of fear that some of people have from using robotics, or having a fear of robotics, that they will replace our jobs. Can I ask you, how many of you have that fear, or how many of you think that robots, when robots take over the routine work, we will lose our jobs? Yeah, there is a people here attending this conference who think the robots will take over our jobs. I think that when robots take over the routine work, they will leave time for humans for innovation. Because even if the robots take the ordinary routine work, creativity will still a human gift. And emotional intelligence, creativity, innovation, and compassion cannot be replaced by zeros and ones. So the ATM upgrade the job for the person who was doing the manual work. And on the other side, we will create another jobs for the technology and programming people. For the humanitarian work, we have a lot of examples. For example, the WFP applied blockchain for cash transfer. Blockchain is a technology that helps in reducing the cost for the third party and transferring the money directly to the beneficiaries. Also, UNHCR is using biometrics, IRIS, for the humanitarian work. I would like to mention one of the projects I proposed, and honor was health centers. I always focus on the point that when we propose technology solution, there must be a reason behind this solution. There must be a business need behind this solution. I was working in the e-health project, and Honor was on the Honor HQ. And I was involved in the clinics and the daily work for the health centers. I noticed that the diabetes mellitus cost was painful for the agency, and global-wise, it's a common problem. And there is a lot of diseases associated to it, like the early and late complications, sometimes it leads to total blindness for the patients. So the diabetes is a source of cost that all governments and NGOs are suffering from. There was a great effort by UNRWA to raise the awareness for the diabetes mellitus patients so they can control their disease and stay in a controlled status. But these solutions was limited and was not sustainable because of the lack of funds. I was thinking of proposing a project in artificial intelligence that will be a robust and sustainable project. And I proposed a patient-robot interaction for diabetes management, a robot, a human-like machine who can detect the motion of the person and conduct a face recognition to determine that person. And after that, it can bring the data from the e-health database, and based on the data of the patient, it can perform interactive advices, voice advices with the patient and raise their awareness. This will solve the problem of the large queue that stand on front of the healthcare provider door, the large queue that are just sitting and waiting for their turn. And this waiting time will be reduced. People will go and talk to a human life robot, and they will take enough awareness about their health status, their medicine, and also some of the patients, I noticed that they go out of the camp, they make shopping until their turn is come. Because there is a lack of funds and there is limited resources in front of the large number of patients. This was a pain because there is a hypertension and diabetes people who cannot wait for a long time, and this have health implications on them. This robot, we will put a cost on the first time, but the cost for the long run will be much less than the current manual practices. I know we are running out of time for my turn. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Samah. Mohannad, you come from Oracle. Oracle is, one of those big leading names in areas related to workflows, ERPs, even introduction of artificial intelligence in processes and organizations. During the period preparing for this, you said that you have been very heavily involved in these things, and that you would have a very nice perspective on how businesses and even sometimes how governments are working toward the implementation of automation, workflow, artificial intelligence in making things much more efficient and productive. Please, we're looking forward to your...
Excellent. Thank you, Wael, and كل سنة وانتم سالمين مناسبة العام الهجري الجديد. So my name is Mohannad Ubaidat, and as Wael was saying, I work at Oracle, so I'm doing a lot of work related to running enterprise software for businesses. So I'll talk about AI from the concept or the perspective of machine learning, and how machine learning applies within the software industry, and how it helps basically allow you to use the different business softwares and also the infrastructure related activities that you do in your business in a more efficient fashion. So if we maybe take a step back a little bit and just demystify what machine learning is and how it works. So the idea is, imagine you walk into a bank and you're requesting a loan. You're buying a house or a car or whatever. So what the loan officer will do is they will ask you a series of questions. What's your age? How much money do you make? Where do you live? How long have you been at a particular job? Do you currently own a house or not? And then based on those answers, they will decide, they will put all of that information in an IT system, in a software product, and then they'll decide that you are eligible to take that loan because you're more likely to pay it versus not. So that's the traditional way of doing things. A more machine learning based approach would be benefiting from the historical data that you have about all your customers, their profile, all of that personal and professional information that they have, and whether they actually did pay their loan or they defaulted on their loan. So I take all of that historical data and then I allow the program to adaptively decide or give me the recommendation whether that person should take a loan because they're more likely to pay versus not. So the idea of machine learning is not to have systems that are built on a rigid set of rules that will say 1, 2, 3, if so, then give them the loan versus not. Instead, it builds a model or a pattern of behaviors of all your existing historic customer base, what their characteristics were, and whether they paid their loans or not. So adaptively decide whether a particular new customer that walks in and gives you their information will pay their loan or not. And the way this is beneficial to you if you're running such a business is it scales much better and it adapts itself continuously to the data. So if you have different patterns of people paying or not paying, as they interact with your system, the system will automatically adapt itself. I don't have to go back to my software developer, IT department, my software vendor, and ask them to change the product to match the new behavior of customers. The product will adaptively enhance itself. So machine learning, that's where it comes in. It's again, benefits from the data that you already have. Now, the ideas behind machine learning and the science behind it has been around for decades and in certain cases, centuries. So Bayes' rule, for example, or probability theory has been around for a lot of time. Bayes' rule is a very fundamental rule that's used in machine learning. It was published in the 1700s, and we have a lot of papers and books that have been written throughout the years and the past few decades around how to use data to identify patterns and to predict behaviors. So examples of that, like if I want to buy a house and it costs a certain amount of money, is it likely that that house price will go up in value? So how do I predict a particular price movement for the house or an apartment or a piece of land that I want to invest in? If I'm in consumer services or maybe selling services to my customers in telecom or what have you, I want to predict the lifetime value of that customer. How long that customer is likely to stay with me? Is there a risk that that customer will leave my service or my product and go to a competitor product? So there are a lot of different algorithms and models to tackle different types of business challenges that you can implement using machine learning. Now, if you're running a company, you have a lot of different departments with that company. So it's not only that you want to improve customer relationship, customer retention, and increase maybe the customer value, but you also want to make sure that you retain top talent and you hire the right talent for your company. So machine learning can come in and help in that. So if let's say I have a new job opening for a position and I get hundreds or thousands of resumes applying to that position, how do I match the right setup? How do I do pre-screening of the resumes without manual human intervention? So going back to the point that was mentioned by the previous panelists, we talked about will machines replace human beings? It's more machines will complement the work and the amount of effort that a human being needs to do. So instead of having the human being spend their time on mundane, error-prone, boring, bureaucratic tasks, I will have them spend it on more intelligent tasks. So instead of having a human being sit through 100 resumes, I can have a machine learning algorithm that matches the resume to the job position that I have, weeds out the ones that don't make sense for me to even look at. And then the next thing is I'll look at patterns in my system. So I have maybe an accountant. I'm looking for an accountant. So I have a very successful accountant in my company. In my appraisal system, I'm capturing characteristics of that accountant. So those characteristics can also help me come up with the right interview process for a new accountant that I'm trying to bring into my company so that they have the potential of being a successful candidate in the company. So if you're running a business in HCM, as I mentioned, you can do that. You can also look for signs of top talent leaving your company, maybe again through the appraisal system, maybe through the competition that's happening in the market for top talent. If you're in the financials department, you're looking for fraudulent activities that may be happening in your system that are hard to detect manually. If you are in sales, which is a favorite topic by everyone, how do I increase sales? How do I give the right offer to the right customer? Because I know from their behaviors that they are more likely to sign up for a particular type of service or to buy a new product from me. and so forth. So there are so many applications in every department. And last but not least, the IT department itself. So, coming from Oracle, we not only have business software, but we also work with our customers on the IT side, running databases, running middleware software, and things of nature that help them build their own custom solutions, custom software solutions. So on the IT side, you have a huge amount of time and effort and money spent on managing IT systems. So typical example is a database. I need to patch the database, I need to upgrade it, I need to make sure I'm on the latest security levels to avoid any risk to basically leaking data outside of my organization. I need to make sure that there's no regression of performance when I upgrade from one version to the next. And all of this up until maybe a couple of years ago has been a very time-consuming human activity that requires very highly skilled personnel. Now we have machine learning built inside of those software components. So the database can patch itself, can upgrade itself, and can even auto-tune itself to make sure that the performance level is guaranteed between upgrades and between additional IT projects that are invested. So how do I take advantage of all of that? How do I get started? How do I create an IT strategy for my company? So I think the first thing you have to do is find a real solution, a real business problem or a challenge that you have today, and start with that. We've seen a lot of hype around machine learning, around blockchain, and what we've seen alongside the hype is people looking for a problem to fit to that technology so that they are on the cutting edge of implementing technology. I think instead you have to go back and look at your pain points, look at your business challenges, and see where machine learning can help you with a particular problem. Formulate that problem. A very good example, I think all of us here that are seeing the investment from the telecom companies in fiber, installing fiber by the ISP provider, internet service providers. We're seeing a lot of competition between them, but to be able to lock you in as a customer, they basically give you a very good introductory price, but they lock you in for years. They will tell you, like, sign a contract for 3 years, and I'll give you 300 megabits at 35 Jordanian dinars, which is a very compelling story, but at the same time, it means we're not taking advantage of how the customer is using the service. Is the customer happy with my service? Are they using it continuously? How can I look for signs that that customer is more likely to leave me to a competitor because they're unhappy with my service, rather than resort to old methods of locking you in with a contract that's 3 years long or 5 years long and so forth. So I can use machine learning to improve that particular aspect of it, reduce the customer churn, customers going from my service to another service. So again, the first idea is, or the starting point is, what is the business challenge that I have? What is the goal that I'm trying to achieve? So the business challenge, let's say losing a customer. The goal is to keep that customer and increase their lifetime value for me. The next thing is, what kind of data do I need? Again, machine learning is based on data. Without data and without clean data, you cannot really come up with the right set of recommendations and models. So what is the right set of data that I need? Data can be customer behavior, how they're using my service. Are they finding a lot of service requests? Do they have a lot of complaints about my data? Data could be external factors. The government just increased the tax on the internet or telecom. That's why my customers are not charging as often as they used to. It could be also things related to customer priorities. Maybe if they're using a cell phone, maybe they are moving to a different region and that region doesn't have good coverage. So basically use all of that data to build the model. Figure out the right model to build. Is the model that I need to build, there are a lot of technical terms associated with this. I'm trying to do a prediction, a regression. I'm trying to do a classification or clustering scenario or what have you. And then once I figure all of that, I start taking that data, cleansing it, correlating it, building a model. So now I have a formula, a mathematical formula that can give me an answer whether that customer is more likely to leave or not. And then I decide the next set of actions. So again, the benefit of machine learning is just not for the sake of doing machine learning, is for the sake of improving my business, doing something that reduces the amount of human activity that I need to spend time on. So the system at the end maybe will recommend that I give this particular customer a new offer, a reduced fee or what have you, to be able to retain them in my system. So yeah, this is quickly.
That's excellent. Look, actually, the nice thing about being a chair of this session is that I am a novice. I am not part of this industry, so I can look from the outside. You look a lot and you see the different point of view that has been put, and everybody talks about Industry 4.0 and how they're, merging things together. Machine is merging with human, data is driving, artificial intelligence and big data analytics and everything is actually digging into these things. Actually, if you look at it, you start thinking, where is this going? How am I going to comprehend this? And is it going to control me, or am I going to control it? So this creates this very big question about, accountabilities and responsibilities, about the social aspects, even the regulatory aspects, all of these things. Every day, that day, I don't know where, one of the big organizations, their data was hacked. While somebody else, data is the next oil. So how do I make use of this data? While how do I make sure that it is not being used against me? How does it, how do I control this technology, especially that it's getting to the point where it's running itself, that it doesn't become a negative, Actually, we will call on our friend George to talk about these things, accountabilities, responsibilities, and how are we going to control this? How do we make sure that it doesn't turn against us?
Okay. Good morning, but it's supposed to be a presentation. This is one. Okay. Because I'm a little bit older than most of you, this is the kind of tablets we are using by the beginning of my career. About machine learning and definitions, it's already told. You have some terminology and technology terms, algorithms, analytics, cognitive technologies, machine learning, networks, and deep learning. Okay, that's a little bit techniques. We have big data. Okay, it's everywhere. Nothing is certain, as I said, but death, taxes, and the growth of data. How we use this data, this is a problem. You know about recommendation algorithms and machines and engines. I have a personal experience because I buy books from Amazon from my wife. She likes topics like love dramas and so on. And Amazon recommends some products for me, and you can imagine what kind of products they recommend for me. Okay, I'm not so satisfied with this recommendation algorithm from Amazon. The good news are, okay, AI, it's a big business. According to McKinsey study, there will be about $13 trillion from this technology by 2030. And that gives to some countries economic benefits and so on. Okay, but there are some risks also associated. We can find that today, for example, Siri, we can recognize something, voice recognition, Google. We have problems with responsibility, liability, security, and safety. There is a big problem, discussion in the EU about the GDPR. I don't know if you are aware of it, personal data, and how there is an article about that I have the right as a customer for just asking how the bank recommend me for a loan or not. If there's an algorithm in the beginning, it's not so easy to find out who recommends what. Algorithms are all over, in every business function, from operations to finance, human resources, risk management, so on and so on. They are in every part of our life. But there are also risks associated. Let's say from input data, from design, from output decisions, the human biases, that's the most important thing, technical, usage flow, security flows, and so on and so on. That's a problem. Okay, bypass that with strategy and governance and some measures to be discussed by the policy, by the government or by companies. There are some examples of the risk associated and how they find some solutions, more funny things. And the last one, it's a quote that I like. This is told by Dijkstra, this is a Dutch professor, late in the 70s. Okay, the question of whether a computer can think is no more interesting than the question of whether a submarine can swim. Machines are not thinking. That's all. Thanks for your attention.
Lights on.
Thank you, George. I think from four different perspectives, we have covered 4 different areas related to innovation. We go back to the concept that we're talking about. You have automation. It should take over the mundane activities and things that can be automated. And you would love to leave as much, for humans to actually focus innovation. In principle, it sounds very interesting, but in reality and implementation, it's a very difficult thing to do. Because while you're going in this transformation to automation and taking machines, whether be it virtual machines or physical machine take over, while some are going to go into innovation, other people are going to go, they have to be retrained, and they have to be, in a way, if you want to use the word, one time I used it and somebody was right mad at me, they have to be reprogrammed. Actually, humans maybe have to be re-educated, the society have to be re-educated, and maybe kind of reformatted in a way that uses this concept. While it is an opportunity, it is something that has to be also looked at, very, very carefully. The social aspects has to go hand in hand with the technological aspects. We have 15 minutes left in this session, and I think that should be plenty of time to actually, solicit some questions from the audience to actually address some of the issues that might raise some questions. I ask you to keep the questions brief. We want to maximize the chances for everybody to actually contribute to this. And please address the question. If it's directed to a specific person or it's general, then we will see who will be able to actually address this question. Please. We'll start from there, there. Okay, and then we'll keep on scanning left and right. Please. Do you have microphones? مستعمل شغال.
مرحبا. اسمي فادي, and I have a question. I have 2 kids now, 10 and 5. What advice can you give me if they ask me, Daddy, like what I want to be in the future? Like what are the professions that, because like many of the traditional professions we have today will be kind of eliminated. So what kind of advice I can give my kids regarding to that? Thank you.
Can I take this?
Sure.
Interesting question. I have 2 boys, 16 and 11, and I was having a heart-to-heart with my 16-year-old just 2 weeks ago on just this very conversation. He goes to traditional schools which are international in nature. All of us do send them to great schools, but we go through a certain learning process that was written in the 1930s. And so you and I know that for a fact, that you or I cannot substantially alter the education system. We will have to go with it and enable some additional complementary behavior, which is in the form of lifelong learning. So 24/7 window of learning. So what does it mean is for us to appreciate that if a kid is going to school and learning 3 or 4 subjects and he gradually goes towards the higher end of complexity in those subjects, we have always looked at it as a function of inputs to outputs. We've never reversed that conversation to say, to what end is this education being purported? Now, that question becomes very relevant in the context of kids is, what do I do when I grow up? The whole point is that I don't know. Even I don't know what I'm going to be doing in the next 5 years, and that is an unfortunate fundamental reality. Our children do not expect us not to know, and I think we should be honest. We don't know that either. We can only speculate to a point. But what we know is a couple of things that anybody needs to have as foundations. And one is the ability to communicate, whatever be the language. You have to be able to interact because it is not a single soul model. Second is the ability to think. And thinking does not come by learning coding alone. You will have to enable it through engineering, through science, through mathematics. And the third is the ability to converse and have intelligent discussions, disagreements. Can we enable our children to do that? So to your question, and that's exactly what I was telling my children as well, I don't know what you'll be doing in the future. All these predictions you can read to Kingdom Come, and every 3 years there will be a brand new set of jobs. Today's sexy jobs are data scientists, right? 3 years ago it was data analytics, and in another 5 years it is going to be AI specialists, right? Right now AML and pattern recognition are your favorite job types. It'll change in the next 5 years. We don't know where we are going. The whole point is that let's try and equip ourselves to a certain future that is A, ambiguous, B, extremely vague, 3, extremely well connected, and 4, extremely complex. So let's not simplify life. So, sorry, a very complex answer to a very simple question, but I would see it that way.
Actually, that's a very nice question. Each of us have a boy or children that ask the same question. Yeah, please go ahead. I think
Actually,
it hits very close.
Thanks for your question. This question has a very special meaning for me because one of my goals is to establish a robotic club to inspire children, a robotic and coding club. I think children can be inspired by giving them the capacity to ask questions and to explore what is AI and what is not AI. And I think engaging children in artificial intelligence concepts with games will be helpful to achieving that.
I would like to add to that. I would teach them, maybe a little bit funny, but I would teach them linear algebra and probability theory. But in all seriousness, everybody should know how to code. Hopefully your kids will be talented in something specific that they will have a passion for, and hopefully they'll grow up to basically be excellent in that. But whatever you do nowadays, you have to have some basic coding skills, HTML, CSS, understanding of data and how to take advantage of data. Wisdom comes from information. Information comes from data. So at the end of the day, we as human beings and how we take the next action as a human being, I'm implementing, my historical interaction with a particular person, a set of events. So how to analyze data and how to effectively take an action based on that data. That's how human beings work. That's why it's called machine learning and artificial intelligence. But I think a solid foundation in math, a solid foundation in at least computer skills, basic ones, are needed for any profession in the future and today.
I think you hit a very raw nerve for everybody. So, Zaid, please. Here. It's okay. Right. And then we will go here, and then we'll go here.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this session. I want to start where the moderator ended, with the social aspect of it. A few months back, Jason Silva, a YouTube personality, sat where you're sitting right now, and he summed it up. The difference between the fourth industrial revolution and the first industrial revolution is that humanity had the time to react and reproduce the jobs for people during the first industrial revolution. This time around, we do not have the time to react. The change is much faster than the human pace. So what we need to do, in my opinion, is to add a socioeconomic and a sociopolitical layer. Otherwise, we're going to see polarity globally, and we've started to see polarity in political views, and that could destruct us. This is an aspect that I would have loved to see in this panel, on how can we address the changes that are coming on a social level. That's the last point that you started.
Okay.
And convince people that change is not as bad as it's going to be. Another aspect is we're going to push towards singularity. Whether you believe that singularity is going to happen or not is irrelevant, because we're going to push, humanity is going to push towards singularity. And that push will make current jobs even more
obsolete.
obsolete. So that's another aspect to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody want to address this?
I do a lot of work on the policy front with governments around the world. Let's start with your second point on singularity. Yes, it's great to presume singularity is just in the near-term future. Possibly, thanks to quantum computing, we might get there faster. The biggest challenge is human cultures and traditions over the last 300 odd years of documented history at least have not reflected replacements. The old has never been replaced by a newer model. What you have seen instead is that the new is layered on top of the old, right? It just, maybe if you're from this city, if you look at Amman itself, just the city, you probably find 5 different layers. I'm not talking economic segregation as much as it is thinking segregation, the kind of businesses people do or the way in which they relate to each other. And this is true around the world. So singularity, I think, is perhaps, in my personal view, probably a foolhardy goal to pursue that. Having said that, the socio-economic element and construct is always premised on those layers. Can we bring those layers together? So what is the measure of success? It's that there is A, no poverty, right? That's possibly what we want. B, we want everyone gainfully employed. And 3, we want everyone to be ready for an uncertain future. So that's where policy comes to play. Having said that, policy does not happen in isolation. See, industry cannot run its pace and hope for the government to catch up. That's the problem around the world. The kind of work we do is premised on making policy run as fast as all of you. And it never catches up because you and I don't look beyond a 5-year balance sheet, whereas a government does not look less than a 20-year generation. And there's a huge gap. So I think we have to collaborate. So the measures of success is socio-economic. What it means is, in technology context, ICT for development, right? Doing well by doing good. If we can embed those models, I think each country might take a different path on its way to success, but eventually you will be able to marry social goals with economic goals in an effective manner. Many countries have gotten to do that, but it is collective responsibility.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Najib Boulos. I teach medicine at the University of Jordan. And I'm very glad that I was able to attend this meeting because Mr. Nidal allowed me to come in. I would like to have 2 comments. Number 1, regarding what you should have your kid learn. Please don't forget poetry. Please don't forget music. Please remember that these are very important attributes that make life very nice and very interesting, and I hope we do so. Now, that said, my other comment is the following. I find that we really fear what we do not comprehend. And I tell you, as a doctor, I keep on listening to the robots, to this and that. I'm not afraid, because we have lived through many advances, and none of them has taken the place of what you as a person think. However, a smart person makes sure that they continue to be ahead of the curve. And when I first came to the University of Jordan, I was only typewriting. The IBM was wonderful. It was an electrical machine. Then the computer came. Now we use PowerPoint, we use, but it is still the same information. So I find that 2 things have been happening. All of this beautiful revolution has gone in the absence of people like myself. We are afraid because we don't know that this is going to be useful to us. So may I urge that these subjects be taught at the university level. In fact, people like, I would love to do medical students to teach them how to make apps. For example, you were worried about diabetes. No, I'm going to go beyond the robot. We're doing much more than that. And we know what we want. My problem is that I know, but I don't know the pilot who is going to carry me there. So I really think there should be more interaction, and I do hope that in the future much more interaction can happen between all of these fields, because this is going to be something that's useful for all of us, provided we don't feel left out. That's all. And that's why I was a little bit concerned that I don't have the time to really talk about this, because I don't think there are many other people other than all of you from IT.
Thank you.
I urge you to invite others like me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Zaid Arida, Hussein Technical University. My question is 2 parts. Thank you for your comments. First question is, since most of you gentlemen and lady coming from the private sector, are we doing a good job connecting with universities to bridge the gap, since we are advancing so much I'm a private sector myself, I used to be, and now in the academia, and we're saying in the presentation that robots coming from, in a very speedy way taking over like human jobs, but at the end of the day, somebody got to program those robots. Intaj doing a great job is providing us with slides every once in a while saying that 2020 we got 1 million job vacancies in coding. Is the private sector doing a good job by steering some of the universities on what those kids need to learn? We keep talking AI, we keep talking machine learning, deep learning, all that stuff. But did we break it down into small components so we can steer those kids into the right education? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take another question because time is going to run out. Please, Salim.
Thank you, Salim Karachi. My concern is that technology, the revolution we're witnessing is not inclusive. We have, a company like Amazon that can buy Jordan 15 times and save the cost of Lebanon 17 times, and so on and so forth. And even within a certain society, the gap between the haves and the have-nots has widened. So, and we just heard from Muhannad, he just killed, all intelligent jobs, interesting jobs, and Samah did the same. Bobby killed all the mundane jobs at the bottom, the routine jobs, etc. Okay, and we say everybody can code, and tomorrow coding will be automated. So, there are legible concerns that, the population of the world is increasing, the wealth is not distributed. What does society need to do to figure that out so that we don't have alienated people, a revolution at the end of the day?
Okay, well, please.
Yeah, I just want to comment quickly on the medical applications of machine learning. And I take care of an older parent myself. And basically one of the things that you struggle with typically in taking care of a senior parent is basically the drug applications, drug dosage, the timing of the dosage, the interactions between the different drugs. And you typically go and see your doctor once every 2 months, 3 months. They don't know at all what's happening to you throughout the rest of that period. There isn't a lot of data that we capture and that we share with the doctor. And even if you do, the doctor doesn't do much with it, right? If you go to the doctor, and I do go to the doctor with 6 pages of observations, and I sit and read through all of that, and he listens to me for 30 minutes, and then he might give me a recommendation to change the dosage or maybe have it at a different time of the day, but he will not see the impact of that until 2-3 months later. So I think there's a lot of application for that area specifically for medicine, where you're tracking the vitals, maybe you're wearing a Fitbit device, tracks the vitals of a patient, and maybe additional things that you can track down, and then have machine learning algorithms find the patterns and different interactions between different drugs that you're taking and how they could be basically adversely affecting you as a patient. So we can talk offline if you'd like.
Okay. Anybody would like to address final points by Zaid and Salim, because time is up.
Yeah, can I say something?
We need 30 seconds each. We will, with the permission of the organizers, we'll take a couple of minutes.
I think the question should not go unanswered.
Okay.
Mr. Salim, great points, and I think let's have a quick offline chat on Humanity 2.0 as to what you're alluding to. Sir, to your question on academics, there is a fundamental challenge across the world, and one is that should education systems remain within the context of knowledge delivery and not get too very caught up in the operationalization of that knowledge in terms of translation to jobs. This has been a constant challenge. It is not going to go away anytime soon. What we need to do instead is twofold actions. Knowledge, because you structure knowledge over an 18-year, 20-year window of a student's, of an individual's learning. You cannot shrink that as easily as you would like to. That will continue. It needs to be complemented. 2 things. At the tertiary level, industry can complement. Industry does not work closely with universities anywhere in the world outside of the United States. That has to fundamentally change, and all of us in this room have to make that happen. Secondly, we tend to look down upon vocational training institutions. They need to be brought into the fold, and we keep arguing all the time that if we brought them into the fold, now they are the ones who are much closer to applicability as opposed to, say,
I have to interject because they're going to...
Sure.
Please, Samah, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, okay. I want to add, to highlight a point. I want to back to the point of the risks and challenges associated with applying the artificial intelligence and robotics. I was discussing with a colleague yesterday that one of the basic skills that we, surviving skills that we have as humans is the social skills and being able to gather in groups and being a social creations. I think if artificial intelligence reach a point where it replaces our social relationships, then the disaster starts. Another thing I would like to add is we are affecting and being affected by the artificial intelligence. One of the examples, when we look at the current robots, that commercial robots existing in the market, we see a lot of female robots. So our concept, our stereotype on gender, for example, is affecting the robotics, the artificial intelligence. One of them is Sophia robot. When they present Sophia robot, it says, friend me on Facebook. This looks funny, but when you look deeply from a humanitarian point of view, you note that we are affecting the artificial intelligence, and they will affect us back in future if we do not control this revolution.
Thank you. Thank you very much. سامحونا معلش.
My opinion, it's we are missing a common language. This is an example I said before. GDPR, EU regulation, were made by lawyers without asking IT people. Now we have a problem in EU. And AI, the United States, the EU will be behind the AI because of this law. There's missing a common language between IT guys, IT people, AI people, and the common people. We're missing that.
Thank you. I think that's a good point to stop. We thank you very much. For me, it was a very interesting session. I hope it was for you. Actually, I'm glad that it raised more questions than it answered. This is an ongoing task that will go, ongoing dilemma that we have to answer. It's a challenge. The world is going exponential. The world is going to go towards singularity, whether we like it or not. It's for us to catch up. I think our kids understand this 10 times better than we do. As one guy once mentioned it, they are the original inhabitants of the technology. We are the migrants to that part of the world. I'm sure 10 years from now, if the same discussion takes place, the context will be completely different, and the problems discussed will be even completely different. We thank you very much. We enjoyed having you here. Thank you, dear panelists. It has been a pleasure having you over. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, hands together for panelists and Wael. Thank you so much.